There are two kinds of lives: the life you've been handed and the life you're meant to live. For many men, the gap between the two feels vast. Modern society has become expert at producing men who are productive on paper but empty in spirit, distracted, depleted, and drifting from one desire to the next. Semen retention isn't just about sexual discipline. It's about bridging that gap. It's about reclaiming your vitality, your purpose, and your authenticity so your life finally feels true. When a man learns to master his sexual energy, not repress it but transmute it, he begins living from his core. His days are charged with purpose, his relationships become clearer, his mind sharper, and his spirit aligned. This is not an ideology, but a biological truth. This is not about shame or abstinence, but about remembrance, remembering your power, your potential, and your presence. This video is an invitation to step into a life that feels true through the ancient, sacred, yet universally ignored practice of semen retention. Before we talk about semen retention, ask yourself this: does your life truly feel like yours? Not the one you advertise online, not the one your parents wanted, not the one that's a reaction to wounds, pressure, or insecurity, but the one that calls to you when you're quiet and honest. A life that feels true is not about perfection. It is about alignment. It's the feeling of waking up and knowing you're exactly where you need to be, doing what you're meant to do. It's being connected to your core identity, your mission, values, and energy, rather than chained to compulsions, old habits, or fleeting distractions. But today, men have been turned into consumers instead of creators. Our energy is harvested through screens, overstimulation, pornography, and relentless hustle culture. We've forgotten how to feel. We've forgotten how to lead ourselves. Semen retention is a rebellion against that numbness. It's the path back to yourself. To understand semen retention, we have to understand energy. Your sexual energy is not merely biological. It's creative energy, the same force that creates life. It's powerful, potent, magnetic, and deeply spiritual. The ancient yogis called it ajas, alchemists called it the philosopher's stone, warriors called it vital essence, and modern science calls it reproductive potential. But regardless of the name, the principle remains. This energy fuels not just your body, but your mind, spirit, and destiny. When you release semen casually, compulsively, or without purpose, you also release motivation, clarity, and vitality. It's not the act of sex or orgasm that's the issue. It's the unconscious expenditure of your most concentrated energy. Retention, then, is not repression. It's preservation and transformation. By conserving this creative force, you begin to transmute sexual desire into creative drive, discipline, willpower, and deep inner peace. Instead of scattering your energy outward, you direct it inward and upward. That's when your life begins to feel true, because you're no longer wasting the very fuel that powers your mission. Most men live in a fragmented state. You feel pulled in 1,000 directions, your desires pulling one way, your responsibilities another, your past haunting your future. You try to be disciplined, but your energy feels scattered. You want to be purposeful, but you're tired, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. This fragmentation is not a coincidence. It's the natural result of a life lived in energetic depletion. When you constantly ejaculate, you biologically deplete dopamine, zinc, testosterone, and the energetic charge that supports clarity, confidence, and drive. That's why you feel sluggish. That's why it's harder to focus. That's why your goals feel heavy instead of exciting. Semen retention doesn't magically fix your life, but it creates the internal conditions that make alignment possible. It gives you back to yourself. Let's break down how retention makes your life feel true in 3 dimensions: physiological, psychological, and spiritual. 1. Physiological alignment. Your biology becomes an ally instead of a burden. Instead of fighting fatigue, brain fog, or hormonal imbalance, you feel fueled by your own chemistry. Testosterone naturally rises with retention. Testosterone isn't just about sex drive. It affects ambition, decision-making, courage, discipline, and physical health. Energy levels increase, not by hype or caffeine, but by inner vitality. Your immune system strengthens because the body is no longer forced to reproduce semen constantly. Sleep improves because your nervous system isn't numbed by overstimulation and artificial climax. This is why semen retention is not just a spiritual practice. It is a biological strategy. It is a return to alignment with your native wiring as a man. Retention sharpens your mind. It strengthens your ability to say no to distraction, impulsiveness, and self-sabotage, and reinforces discipline without suppressing desire. Self-control becomes natural, not forced. Anxiety decreases because your energy is no longer being drained unconsciously. Mental clarity increases, so you make better choices and follow through. Self-respect strengthens because you witness yourself mastering impulses, especially the strongest one, sexual release. This psychological strength is the foundation of a true life. You can't live a life aligned with your purpose if your mind is constantly hijacked by desire, regret, or exhaustion. Retention is the first act of self-loyalty. Deep down, every man wants to feel like a warrior, a creator, a king, not in an egoic way, but in the way that reflects inner power and sovereignty. Retention reconnects you with that part of yourself. You feel more grounded, more you. Your intuition strengthens. The fog of lust clears, and you begin hearing your deeper purpose more clearly. You become more present. Presence is the currency of truth. You feel aligned with your mission, not pressure to perform, but pulled by conviction. This alignment is what makes a life feel true, when your daily actions reflect your soul's purpose, not society's conditioning. Imagine a version of yourself that is not fighting to change, but naturally living in alignment. You wake up with energy, not dread. You look in the mirror and feel proud of your choices, your discipline, and your trajectory. You are not enslaved by urges. You are not haunted by emptiness. You are not exhausted before the day begins. Instead of chasing things to feel alive, you are alive. Retention creates this shift. Your conversations deepen, your relationships improve, your work gains meaning. The world begins responding to you differently. Not because you're putting on an act, but because you're emitting strength, focus, and integrity. This is what a life that feels true looks like. Honest, grounded, purposeful, aligned. Retention is not anti-sex. It is anti-waste. Sex itself is sacred when practiced consciously, not compulsively. The problem is not sexuality. It's the constant loss of life force without intentionality. With retention, sex becomes richer. Your presence is deeper. Your connection is stronger. You are no longer hooked on the high. You are rooted in the experience. Some men transmute their energy through lovemaking without ejaculation. Others choose periods of celibacy to build power. Others enter relationships where retention becomes a mutual practice of sacred intimacy. Whichever path you choose, retention is not about fear, it's about mastery. You are not banishing desire, you are elevating it. Start small, start real. You don't need to disappear into a cave or delete your desires. You simply need to choose yourself more deeply, more fiercely, and with more consistency. Here are some practical steps to begin. Commit to a retention period that feels challenging but doable. Start with 7 days. Then go to 14. Then 30. Don't overcomplicate it. Just build trust with yourself. Rewire your energy. You cannot retain semen without redirecting that energy. Find a creative outlet. Writing, music, business, fitness, design, coding, prayer. When your energy has a path upward, retention becomes fuel instead of pressure. Practice breath and presence. Your sexual energy can feel strong or overwhelming at first. Learn to breathe, to meditate, to sit with it. When you stop fighting your desire and start working with it, your energy becomes power. Watch your environment. Retention is nearly impossible if your environment is filled with overstimulation, porn, social media, sexual content, or boredom. Protect your energy, or it will leak. You are responsible for the environment in which your strength develops. Remember your why. Retention without purpose is just abstinence. Retention with intention becomes transformation. What kind of man are you becoming? What does a true life look like for you? Write it, feel it, Visualize it daily. Most men think retention is about superpowers. And yes, focus, energy, confidence, intuition, physical strength, they all increase. But the real reward is simpler and deeper. You finally feel aligned with yourself. You no longer feel like you're betraying your own potential. You no longer feel at war with your own impulses. You begin living with a quiet certainty, a feeling of power, inner peace, and rightness. That's a life that feels true. It is crucial to state that semen retention is not a puritanical doctrine or a condemnation of sexuality. Sexuality is a powerful and beautiful aspect of the human experience. The practice, rather, is about reclaiming sovereignty over that power. It is about elevating sexuality from a reflexive, consumptive act to a conscious, generative force. It is a question of direction, outward and away, or inward and upward. The path is not easy. It is fraught with challenges, from intense physical urges to deep-seated psychological resistance. It is a solitary path in many ways, one that requires a man to confront parts of himself he has spent a lifetime avoiding. It is not a magic pill, but a demanding discipline. Yet, for those who persist, the reward is nothing less than a fundamental homecoming. It is the slow, steady dismantling of the false self, the anxious, needy, distracted persona, and the emergence of the man who is always there beneath the surface, grounded, energetic, clear-minded, emotionally resilient, and directed by a will that is truly his own. It is the feeling of no longer being a passenger in your own life, but the pilot. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your actions are aligned with your deepest truth. In a world of endless distraction and superficiality, that is a life that feels not just different, but true. And in the end, that is the only life worth living.